So hello and welcome back to Books and Things, and welcome back to another episode of Brontë Week. Today I'm going to be talking about Charlotte Bronté's Shirley. Chapter 1. The Vertical. Of late years, an abundant shower of curates has fallen upon the north of England. They lie very thick on the hills. Every parish has one or more of them. They are young enough to be very active and ought to be doing a great deal of good. But not of late years are we about to speak. We are going back to the beginning of this century. Late years, present years, are dusty, sunburnt, hot, arid. We will evade the noon, forget it in siesta, pass the midday in slumber, and dream of dawn. So I read Shirley for the first time very recently, actually only last month. It was my last Brontë novel and I was so excited to read it, and it did not disappoint. It was absolutely beautiful. There are many things I love about it. Shirley is quite different from the rest of Charlotte Bronté's novels in that, unlike the other three, it is in the third person, not the first person, and it covers a much sort of, not exactly broader scope, but it's a much less personal story. We follow quite a few different central characters, and the book is concerned not only with kind of the characters and their personal, emotional stories, but also with kind of the social goings-on in the place it is set. So Shirley is a much more industrial novel, in fact, than the rest of the Bronté's novels. It is still set in Yorkshire, but it's set in a mill town. One of the central characters is a man called Robert Moore, a Frenchman living in Yorkshire who runs a mill and is kind of struggling and trying to improve his mill. In doing so, he is bringing into the town more kind of complex machinery and therefore not employing as many people, and there's quite a lot of backlash from the workers in this town. So he isn't necessarily getting on very well with everyone. And at the same time as this character, Robert Moore, and kind of his industrial problems are happening, we have these two young central heroines of Shirley. One is a woman called Caroline Helston, who is the vicar's niece, and she is a really interesting character. I really like her. She's kind of sweet and quiet, but also very dissatisfied with her life. And one of the reasons why Caroline is so dissatisfied with her life is she really wants to do something, and she has nothing to do. She keeps on asking her relations if she can go and be a governess, and if they'll let her, and they're saying, "What are you doing? You don't need to be a governess. You don't need that money. We're going to support you. You don't need to do that." And she really wants to just have some kind of occupation because she's so bored. She says several times to Robert Moore, who is a kind of distant cousin of her, that she would really, like, she wishes she were a man so she could be his clerk and, like, work for him. The other central heroine is a woman called Shirley, who comes into the book about a third of the way through and is a close friend of Caroline Helston. I kind of wonder why this book is called Shirley, not Caroline, because I felt like Caroline was the central character for me, and Shirley always felt a little bit more removed and a little bit less understood. She's another fascinating heroine, however, a really strong and interesting character, and the way these two girls kind of play off each other is quite different. Caroline, although she is very interesting and intelligent, she is much more kind of quiet and placid, and she also doesn't have that much money herself, whereas Shirley is an heiress. She has lots of money and she is much more kind of capricious and loud and kind of less shy than her friend Caroline, but they're a very interesting pair together. They have a really nice friendship. I love this book. Lots of industrial action, lots of nice, beautiful romance, social criticism and Victorian love stories. It's basically all I look for in a book. So yes, there are many things I really love about Shirley. I think it is absolutely beautiful, and I really very much enjoyed it. Like no love stories move me like a good 19th century love story, and I have to say that I think Charlotte Brontë is the master of unrequited love. Like, I've never read another author who captures unrequited love in such a painful and kind of beautiful and just so brilliant way. I find the same in Shirley as I find in Villette. It's just done absolutely brilliantly. Another thing I love about Shirley is a lot of the kind of gender issues and the feminist stuff going through it. So much proto-feminism in the most brilliant way. As I already said, Caroline feels like really bored in her life and really wants some action and to do something. Shirley as well kind of longs for that, and because she's got this money, she kind of has a bit more power, not as much as she would if she were a man, but kind of more than most women do. Her kind of friends and family joke about her being a man. They refer to her as a gentleman. They call her Captain Keedler rather than Miss Keedler sometimes, which kind of goes to imply that because she has this money and a bit more power, she kind of takes on a kind of manly role. And there's a lot of discussion between Caroline and Shirley about what they would do if they were men and how they would behave and how their lives would be different. That kind of stuff is absolutely fascinating, and there's some brilliant bits when they're like discussing with men's views on women. And like, there's this brilliant bit where Shirley says to Joe, who's an overlooker in Mr. Moore's factory, she says, "Joe, do you seriously think all the wisdom in the world is lodged in male skulls?" And there's some brilliant lines like that, so just stuff that makes me very happy. It's just like a joy to read, as well as distressing. You know, so many women in the Victorian period were kind of crushed in that way. The boredom of being a lady in Victorian society, of being a middle-class woman and not being able to do anything, is really very strongly put across in this book. There is a bit at the beginning of the book where Caroline thinks that she might be married, and then soon after she discovers that the man she thought was in love with her isn't, and then she begins to think, well, okay, I'm not going to be married, but what the hell am I going to do with my life if I don't get married? Because that's what ladies do in the 19th century, and it's just absolutely fascinating, just like brilliant and painful in all the best ways. Also, all the kind of industrial stuff going on in the background, this kind of danger from rioters and strikers and the kind of problems of industry at that time is really interesting. In many ways, actually, Shirley, more than any other of the Brontë novels, reminds me of Elizabeth Gaskell in quite a lot of ways. I think if you like Jane Eyre and you like North and South, you will absolutely love Shirley. In terms of things I like less about Shirley, there isn't that much. I think it's not higher up because there are other Brontë books I love more rather than because I love this one less, if that makes sense. However, as I do sometimes find with Charlotte Brontë, I did find, not that it took a while to get started, but it felt like the book started being about one thing and then kind of shifted into being a different thing. The industrial action and the kind of problems of industry and the kind of bad harvests and that kind of thing going on in the early 19th century in Yorkshire is made much more of in the first third of the book before we meet Shirley, and then it kind of moves from being focused on kind of the men and the industry to being focused on Caroline and Shirley. It kind of moves from being about the social and the industrial to the personal, which means when you start reading it, it doesn't feel like it's going to be about what it ends up being about. The fact that Shirley doesn't come in till about a third of the way through the book means the first third of the book I was like, where is Shirley? This book is called Shirley. I haven't met anyone called Shirley yet. Yeah, a bit like I do sometimes find with Charlotte Brontë, it takes a while to get into the main focus of the plot in a way that I kind of enjoy and I think is nice about Victorian novels, because I feel like that wouldn't happen today. Like in most modern novels, I feel like they get to the point quicker, and sometimes it's nice to have like a kind of slow introductory start where we get a sense of this world we live in before getting into like the main body of the plot. But yes, anyway, I really like Shirley. I think it's a really beautiful, moving, lovely Brontë read, and I think if you like Jane Eyre, you should definitely read more of the rest of Charlotte Brontë, because I know that Jane Eyre is so famous that sometimes it completely eclipses everything else by Charlotte Brontë, and actually she has 3 other very good novels, and I think Shirley is definitely worth a read. So there we go. Let me know if you have read Shirley and what you thought of it, and I'll be back tomorrow talking about another Brontë book.